Oh, hey, yo, did you see this shit? We got the Keith Olbermann endorsement.
Good morning, New York City. I know getting back on your feet after a long holiday weekend is tough, but here's some news that'll put some pep in your step. Like all campaigns, we hired a research firm to poll New Yorkers. What they just found? It's very exciting. Let's start with the headlines. We're now at 27% in the first round of ranked choice voting, firmly in second place behind Andrew Cuomo, with the next campaign in single digits. And in the final round, after every other candidate's been eliminated, it's us at 44% and Cuomo at 56. That's a 12-point gap. In March, it was 40 points. And we've gotten here while a third of New Yorkers still haven't heard of us. That means we're nowhere near our ceiling. That's where you come in. Yes, we're gonna have more rallies, more TV ads, more videos like this, and that's all thanks to your contributions. Just this past weekend, our volunteers passed 600,000 doors knocked. No one else is even in the same galaxy, let alone the same neighborhoods. With less than a month to go, we're going to win a city that New Yorkers can actually afford and send Andrew Cuomo back to the suburbs.
God, I love him. He's so good at his job, too. Like, genuinely, he's got a better instinct for campaigning than AOC does. In terms of messaging, I think he might be like, I can't think of anyone who matches him, to be honest with you, from the left. Generational talent. No, genuinely, yeah. I don't know if it's him or if he has a campaign manager who was sent from God. I have no idea. But he is very, very good. Just seems like a fake used car salesman. I don't understand why you think that, to be honest with you. Because he's wearing a suit? I don't know where you're getting that. I don't think he comes across that way at all. Do you think he'll actually deliver, though? I mean, as mayor of New York City, he has the potential to do a lot of good, but he'll also be fighting, like, entrenched institutional forces that despise him and life itself that are very, very powerful. I don't think he's going to get anywhere near as much as he wants to get done, but I do think he'll get a lot done. He's fighting the uphill battle. Yeah, we got the Keith Olbermann endorsement. Problem is reaching out to older POC in the Jewish community. We'll see. The Jewish community, I mean, obviously with regard to like the coordinated media smear against him, claiming that he like doesn't denounce the Holocaust or whatever, like they're trying to manufacture consent very hard. If it turns out that like 95% of older black people vote for Eric Adams or Cuomo or whatever, I'm going to have a generational crash out on stream, and it will be racially incendiary. All I'm going to say is that there's a very pervasive myth that circles around lefties for some reason that the black voting bloc in America is progressive, like relative to white people. And I don't know where that came from, apart from their assumption that because like black must mean more left. I don't know where they're getting that from. A recent poll of Jewish voters shows Mamdani has the support of 1 in 5 Jews in New York City. I mean, he's second behind Cuomo. It's a ranked choice voting primary, right? We'll see how it goes. Genuinely asking why hasn't AOC endorsed him yet? I don't know. Let me call her on her personal cell. What the f*** are you asking me for? My guess is that she and Bernie are saving up for a Kamehameha like within the last few weeks of the primary so that the news is still big, you know? Like they'll show up in New York City and do like a blitz of rallies, like one a day or something, trying to, charge up the energy, you know? That's my guess. But like I said before, he doesn't get an endorsement from them. That's like that's a black mark right there, okay? That's going on their permanent record. I'm gonna be real pissy about that. I'd be like, oh, so they're threatened by them? No, I don't think they would be threatened by Mamdani. My guess would be that if AOC doesn't endorse Mamdani, it's because AOC has presidential ambitions, and she's been informed by very powerful people that there might be like a competing interest there. It would be like a weighted option in her head, where she would be told like, you can endorse him, but it'll be used against you, and your presidential run in the long run is more important than a New York City mayoral run now. Getting into power is full of like trades like that, you know? That being said, that would only be my assumption, not like guaranteed knowledge, and I also don't think I would like it at all. Like just because she's told that, I don't think you should accept it. What is Bernie's excuse? If Bernie is going to endorse Mamdani, it would be the same time as AOC.
I'm feeling impeccable. I'm feeling amazing. I'm feeling impeccable. I'm feeling amazing.
That's great. Kamala's daughter supports him. She's pretty cool, right? Isn't she like a drip lord?
I'm passing the phone to the next mayor of New York City who's going to make New York happier, healthier, and more affordable.
And I'm passing the phone back to the people of New York City because we have 51 days to win this election. 51 days to turn the page on a chapter of failed leadership in our city, and 51 days to finally deliver a city.
Oh, now we'll never know what he's going to deliver. Cut off too early. Any new interviews? Oh, he got one with News 12. What do you think the quality of this one's going to be? Here we have Zohran Mamdani, accused repeatedly and credibly of not denouncing the Holocaust. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I see you, mainstream news. It's 19 minutes and it's an interview. Remember that NBC interview? The one where the lady... I know I keep saying this, but it's still so crazy. The lady held the mic to his face and she was like, "You've criticized Netanyahu. How do you think Jewish New Yorkers feel about you criticizing their prime minister?" What the f***, lady? They should have tried you at Nuremberg, you anti-Semite. Jesus Christ.
Congratulations on your relatively
All right, well, so much for the audio quality.
recent nuptials. I could only imagine that running for mayor of the largest city in the United States and planning a wedding at the same time is no easy feat. How did you manage it?
Well, you look, I think New Yorkers deserve a leader that hustles just as hard as they do. And finding the time is also much more possible.
How the f*** is he so good at this shit, man? Jesus Christ, even a question like that, he bounces that shit. He's like rack of abs you can bounce quarters off of. You toss him a compliment and he's like, "Yep, just like New York. I'm, ready to face the day."
When you have a partner who's just as supportive as mine is. And I've been so lucky to not only fall in love, but
doesn't accept the compliment, turns it into a compliment to New York City, says the people deserve better, and compliments his partner. Jesus Christ, man. It's insane. He's so good. Is the bar on the floor? Is he actually that good? No. The bar is on the floor, but this guy is genuinely one of the most talented politicians I've ever seen in my life.
to have a wife who has been at the heart of making this decision of running for mayor many, many months ago. And now we see with just about 6 weeks left that we have a real path to win this race.
And so from marital promises to campaign promises,
Yes.
let's dive right
You have to fulfill them all.
That's right. And you know what they say? They say that this is the second toughest political job in the United States outside of the presidency. So let's start out by asking you, why should voters trust that you are up for the challenge?
You know, first and foremost, because I actually understand the number one crisis in this city, which is a crisis of affordability. And you can see that in the polls around how New Yorkers are feeling in this moment. You can also see that in conversations you have with New Yorkers. There are so many people who have helped to build this city, sustain this city, but they don't know if they can call themselves New Yorkers next year because they don't know if they can afford their rent or their childcare or their groceries or even their Metro card. And fundamentally, this is a campaign about delivering them a city they can actually afford.
And you mentioned rent, right? The Rent Guidelines Board is considering another round of rent hikes.
Is the suit good? Actually, I think he dresses quite well, to be honest with you. I like the casual suits that he wears. The fabric, the shirt, it's all like tonally in the same in the same range. It looks good. Yeah, I will say, listen, okay, if you didn't vote for Kamala Harris in 2024, I'm not mad at you, because to forgive is to self-heal. To hate is to self-hurt, okay? If you are in New York City and you don't vote for Zohran Mamdani in the mayoral primary, I'm straight up coming for you. I just want you to know that. I'll hurt myself to hold on to that hate.
Coming up for stabilized units, what act would you take as mayor if the board approves those hikes this summer?
I would freeze the rent. And I've said that because we have close to 2.5 million New Yorkers who live in rent-stabilized housing. These are New Yorkers with a median household income of $60,000. And the Rent Guidelines Board found that in the last study, the landlords of those units saw a 12% increase in their revenue.
By the way, the only reason that New York City is still a thriving cultural hub and not just a wasteland for wealthy tourists is because of rent freezes. If it wasn't for the fact that New York City is so rent stabilized, this city would be unaffordable to anyone other than sheltered, single, bachelor tech workers, financial guys. You know, no one would be able to live here. It would all be luxury high rises. The West Village, Chinatown, East Village, all that, it would all be nothing. It would, like, the only people who could live here would be gazillionaires, and all of the local vibrant culture that makes New York City the world's capital, essentially, would be gone. It would essentially, like, you would turn New York City into Dubai. You would turn it into the most insufferable parts of San Francisco. You would turn it into, yeah, the financial district of London. You would scrape clean everything about it that is unique, that makes it renowned the world round, that makes it the city that it is. Just keep that in mind.
And what we need in this moment is relief for those tenants who are on the brink of being priced out of the city that they call their home.
Another front of mind issue for a lot of viewers across our News 12 footprint is the immigration policies. One of the top concerns. Now, as mayor, would you cooperate with ICE as Mayor Adams has in recent weeks, or would you like to change course?
I would change course. You know, I would be, as elected, the first immigrant mayor of this city in generations, and I got my citizenship not too far from here, not too many years ago. And I understand just how deeply terrified so many immigrant New Yorkers are in this moment, where we have a mayor who is willing to throw them away to continue to secure his own personal freedom. And we have a former governor running for Eric Adams' second term, running without the appetite to actually put up a fight to Donald Trump, who in this moment is putting New Yorkers firmly within his crosshairs.
So, pointing out the obvious, you're a self-proclaimed democratic socialist running for mayor of the financial capital of the world. How do you reconcile that contrast, and what would democratic socialism actually look like at City Hall for you?
So to me, democratic socialism is a belief that every person should have what they need to live a dignified life, and that it's local government's job to ensure that. And when you look across the city, you ask New Yorkers, there's a general understanding that if we're talking about K through 12 education or sanitation or libraries, that this is something that's a public good. But there are so many other things that we understand are just as critical to living a dignified life that we're pricing people out of. If it's their rent, if it's their food, if it's their childcare, these are not negotiable things. These are things that every New Yorker needs to call the city their home. And ultimately what a city hall would look like under the leadership of a democratic socialist mayor is a city hall that is fairer, a city hall that puts working people at the heart of it, and a city hall that understands that in...
Do you think ICE would go after him? I have no doubt if he won that the Trump administration would wage war against him and that he would meet it in kind. The real question would be, if that happened, would the Democrats rally behind him, or would they let him be offered up? You know, would they just let Trump do whatever they want because they have to answer to their donors? I'm reminded a little bit, you know, of Jamal Bowman, right? Where, you know, because he's too left-leaning and because he's anti-Zionist, the Democrats stayed silent as AIPAC poured millions of dollars into unseating him with, you know, a Democrat, but like a right-wing Democrat. And they were fine with it. They were fine with that outside financial influence. They were totally fine with it because it wasn't one of their guys getting ousted. He wasn't on the inside.
In this country, where we have seen income inequality decline, we're seeing it rise in our city, and we have to bring an end to that.
To that end, you've proposed city-run grocery stores, fare-free public transit. Supporters certainly say that your plans are bold, but your critics call them unrealistic. How do you plan to fund these ideas without driving away business or middle-class taxpayers?
So let's take these two examples. A network of municipal-run grocery stores, one in each borough, so 5 in total, would cost the city $60 million. The city is already set to spend more than $140 million subsidizing corporate supermarket chains without any guarantee of affordability from that subsidy. So this is less than half of what we're already set to spend. When it comes to fare-free buses, the cost of that is about $700 million a year. That's in the context of a city budget of $115 billion, a state budget of $252 billion. And what we've put forward is a plan to raise $10 billion a year that would make those buses free, pay for universal childcare, and give us the fiscal flexibility to Trump-proof our city by raising taxes on the most profitable corporations in the state to match that of New Jersey's top corporate tax rate, 11.5%.
No, don't you understand? If you marginally raise taxes on the wealthy are all going to move themselves and also their businesses out of New York State. They're gonna, dude, you can't do that. All the trillions of dollars kept within the Empire State in the coolest city in the world, they're all gonna like leave. Like, no, you can't inconvenience wealthy people. There will be like consequences.
5%, and by raising taxes on the top 1% of New Yorkers who make $1 million a year or more by a flat 2% increase, just $20,000, which for someone making $1 million is more like a rounding error.
And talking public safety now, another crucial issue. A lot of your opponents are looking to beef up the NYPD, add more officers at a time when they are saying they are critically short-staffed.
Yeah, you're short-staffed because you have 3 dudes doing nothing at every MTA station. Obviously, you're short-staffed.
plan is somewhat different. You want to create a new agency altogether outside of the NYPD. But with a lot of New Yorkers, especially in high crime neighborhoods, we've done a lot of investigative work, especially with gun violence in recent months. People there, a lot of them are asking for more police, not less. So
just remember when people say high crime neighborhoods that the overall rate of violent crime is like half what it was in the 1990s, and people now are more afraid of crime than they were in the 1990s. More Americans think, like, people want police officers because they're told they want police officers. Because the idea that we need more police officers is the mandated opinion of every single politician and news agency with zero exceptions. People, like, this is entirely a media-created problem.
how do you square your views with their concerns, while of course also addressing the attrition, the overtime issues that the NYPD is battling right now?
You know, police have a critical role to play in creating public safety. And what we're doing right now, however, is relying on them for almost every single failure of the social safety net. And that reliance is preventing them from doing their actual jobs. And you can see that in the stubbornly low clearance rates for the major 7 categories of crime. And when I speak to New Yorkers, like you said, safety is a top concern. They also want to see more of these crimes actually be solved. And the only way we can do that is if we allow police to do their jobs and hire trained mental health professionals and social workers to do the jobs that they were meant to do. And I say that in reference specifically to dealing with the mental health crisis in our city. What we have right now is a system that is failing New Yorkers. It is failing a New Yorker like Wynn Rosario, a young man who is in the midst of a mental health crisis. When he called 911.
It's a very good answer because you cannot win the mayorship while denouncing the NYPD. We've seen this in the past. Like, the NYPD are insane. They kidnapped the mayor's daughter after the mayor criticized them. They marched out because, like, they received light criticism after they murdered Eric Garner. You know, they took an entire citywide strike during which crime did not go up, it went down. Yeah, they're like borderline a terrorist organization.
911 and asked for help in his own home when 2 officers who were trained to provide mental health response then shot and killed him within 3 minutes. That does not serve anyone in that situation or the city at large. We need to ensure we bring the strategies that have worked elsewhere in the country that have been proven successful and aggressively pursue them here in our city, and chief among them also is gun violence prevention.
You have spoken out, obviously.
Oh, you guys don't remember? This was recent. This was also after Eric Garner, right? Mayor Bill de Blasio's daughter was arrested unnecessarily by the NYPD. They knew who she was. And then they tweeted out confidential information about her arrest in a very, like, at the mayor, in a very, like, hey, this yours? Hey, we got your daughter here kind of way. Sent him a piece of her ear in the mail. Yeah, exactly.
Obviously quite vocally in the aftermath of the Israel-Hamas war. You are running for mayor in a city that is home to the largest Jewish population outside of Israel. You know this better than anyone. Some of those voters feel that your positions have alienated them. If you win this election, the primary and then the general election, how will you embrace the Jewish community?
Ultimately, to run to be the mayor of this city is to represent each and every New Yorker, not just cherry-picking those that agree with your policies. And I think of Mayor Koch as an example who said that if you agree with me on 9 out of 12 issues, vote for me. If you agree with me on 12 out of 12, see a psychiatrist. Because ultimately, what we need is someone who is able to bridge the divide, especially where there are moments of tension. And I can tell you that I was at a forum earlier in the race where I was sitting within a synagogue, and at the end of the forum, an older Jewish New Yorker came up to me and whispered in my ear, I disagree with you on one issue, but I agree with you on the others, and I'm going to be ranking you. And I think that's where there's this possibility where we understand we need not agree on everything, but ultimately we know that these disagreements are still based on a shared humanity. And all of my positions, be it about Israel or Palestine or anywhere in the world, comes back from a belief in universal human rights and a recognition that October 7th was a horrific war crime, and what we have seen since is also a war crime, and we have to be able to say those things in the same breath.
You know, it sounds like that was a pretty powerful encounter you had with that voter in the synagogue. Is there any part of your stances as it relates to Israel, now being a candidate on the campaign trail for 7 months in the city, that you've revisited? Or do you...
I look forward to this being like the pivotal question determining the viability of every local political candidate in America for the next 30 years, man. It's like every governor, mayor, whatever, everyone's gonna be like, well, okay, well, how do you feel about this tiny antagonistic rogue state in the Middle East that hates us and wants to kill more brown people. How do you feel about them? Not negative, I hope.
Feel more than ever that your stances are the right ones to have?
You know, I feel that from the beginning of my political career, it's been consistency that I've sought to have in my politics, a belief in international law, a belief in universal human rights, and I think that that has shone through over the course of our campaign. And I also understand that Jewish New Yorkers are concerned about a wide variety of issues. When you look at polling, you see the number one issue is affordability. The next issue is having to do with caregiving of older adults. The next having to do with compensation for that kind of caregiving and that child care. And the issue after that is discrimination. And we have seen...
Yeah, the idea that the most important issue to New Yorkers is the genocide of the Palestinians is insane. Like, because that's all the media wants to talk about, you know? They're not going up to Cuomo and being like, well, what's your intensive plan? Remember, Cuomo's housing and cost-lowering plan was written by AI. You forget that? It was a rambling, incoherent mess that was written by AI. No human overlooked it. They literally was just like, I don't care, I want to be mayor. AI generate me a plan. But no one cares. No one's asking him that. He's not getting any hard-hitting interviews. The deep state has already accepted him. He's the accepted leader. He'll kowtow to Trump, obviously. He's a xenophobe. He's a racist. He's a rapist. No one cares. Even Democrats who previously denounced him as governor have now accepted him as mayor because they're just stooges to Wall Street. They understand, like, oh no, he's been anointed. He's been chosen. Eric Adams is too hot now. You know, he's too controversial. But we just need a do-nothing in here, basically, that'll keep the city's coffers open to for the wealthy to exploit. You know, we don't need anything disruptive. It's the most anti-democratic shit imaginable, man. There are dictatorships with more local democracy. I bet you I could go to like the southern Kurdish provinces of Turkey and find more genuine local democracy than this. I could go find like council seats in Iran that are more democratic than New York democratic politics. It's insane how bad it is here. And the reason the Democrats nationally are so bad is because their leadership comes from New York. That is why.
A horrific rise in anti-Semitism across the city. Jewish New Yorkers comprise more than half of all victims of hate crimes in this city.
And the worst in the nation, we found out a week ago.
And it's unacceptable. And what I have said is, in proposing the Department of Community Safety, this new department that would finally deliver that public safety New York.
Is there though? Yeah, there is. Listen, Zionists might be despicable liars, and they might interpret any pro-Palestinian sentiment as anti-Semitic, but anti-Semitism has been on the rise for a long time. And Jewish people have always been like disproportionately, wildly victimized by hate crimes, you know, harassment or whatever, you know, all the whole range of it. And hatred in general is on the rise.
Have been denied is a core part of it deals with hate violence and increasing the funding for hate violence prevention programming by 800%. That's the largest of any commitment of any campaign in the race, because ultimately what Jewish New Yorkers deserve is what every New Yorker deserves: safety and a recognition of their innate humanity and dignity in this city, and a city government that actually delivers on that, not just talks about it.
Congestion pricing, needless to say, has become an intense battleground. Should New York revise the program, scrap it, or keep it as is?
I believe
the program has been a wild success, by the way.
We should keep it as is. It is a program that I have supported because of its potential to reduce congestion, to increase bus speeds, and to reduce air quality pollution. And what we've seen is that has been the case in the Central Business District of Manhattan. Now, I launched a program in Albany called Get Congestion Pricing Right, which said that when we look at the examples of Stockholm and London, other world cities that have implemented this tolling program, they paired it with an immediate enhancement in public transit service. And because of that campaign with Deputy Majority Leader Mike Gianaris in the state Senate, we won more than $12 million in additional bus service. I still believe we need to deliver more and better bus service and subway service to New Yorkers in tandem with this program, because everyone across the city needs to understand this.
This is a perfect example of what I mean, that when people get accustomed to good things, they stop valuing them. You have like the hedonic treadmill thing, because the fact that New Yorkers complain about MTA service, I've only been to New York City 1 week in my life, and I gotta say, I wish I shared your complaints in my cities. So I wish I had your problems, buddy. Jesus Christ. You know, people there, yeah, oh, well, the train took 11 minutes to come. 11 minutes? Holy shit. Does Seattle not have good public transit? No, there is literally no city in North America like New York City when it comes to public transit. No other city in the entire continent comes close. Not even remotely. No, not DC, not Montreal. New York City is undisputedly on top.
is a moment we transform our streets, we transform our public transit.
Mayor Eric Adams running as an independent, and he says the drop federal charges do not leave him beholden to Donald Trump. Do you buy that?
Not at all. And I think most New Yorkers don't either, because they don't have to listen to his words. They can look at his actions. And his actions are one that you earlier described correctly as collaborating with ICE and collaborating with the Trump administration. And we've seen Andrew Cuomo only offer cowardice. What we need in the response to Donald Trump's attack on this city is courage, conviction, and clarity. And I will be offering that as the next mayor.
Rikers Island. Can you commit to closing Rikers by the 2027 deadline and opening borough-based jails as currently planned? And also would love for you to weigh in whether you feel that the city should have oversight over our jail system versus an independent monitor.
What we've seen is that the city's oversight under Mayor Adams has been one that has been a betrayal of so many of the core promises and hopes of the campaign to close Rikers Island. This mayor has rendered it functionally impossible to close Rikers by the date of 2027, and he has done so by not even trying to follow that timeline. What I would do from the first day I was the mayor is not only use every single tool at my disposal to close this island, but to ensure that we do not continue the Eric Adams legacy of incarcerating even more New Yorkers than we had prior to when he came into office.
So can you commit to getting that done by 2027?
I'm going to do everything I can. It's my hope to deliver it, but ultimately what Eric Adams has done is made it functionally impossible to abide by that same timeline.
He's so
I hope to
good,
disprove
man.
that.
What do you think is a reasonable timeline?
You know, it is something that I will absolutely hope to do as close as we can to 2027, and I think from the first day of my administration, it's going to be a priority of mine to ensure that we actually deliver public safety. I'll give you an example. Rikers Island is currently providing mental health services for about 40% of its incarcerated population. That's at the cost of $550,000 a year per person. Now, we see New Yorkers who are facing mental health issues.
See, shit like that really makes you wonder what the money is going to. How does anything cost that much? You know, it's because the corporate contracts, you know.
Our city, that is the largest provider of mental health services. It should not be that way. Meanwhile, we have programs like clubhouses, better known through one of the examples of Fountain House. They treat New Yorkers with SMI, serious mental illness, at a far better efficiency and effectiveness than Rikers Island, increased rates of employment, decreased rates of loneliness, decreased rates of hospitalization, and the cost of that for a year is $4,000. That's about 2 or 3 days on Rikers. Rikers is not just a moral stain, it's also a fiscal stain and a political stain on our city.
But facilities like that are overcrowded, there's not enough beds, so what would you do? Create more facilities?
Which facilities? The clubhouses?
Yep.
Absolutely. That is the goal here. We have clubhouses which currently are only in a few neighborhoods. We need to have a clubhouse in every single neighborhood. We need to have community mental health navigators that are in the community. And what we mean by that is taking away the stigma of mental health and the crisis that it is, and finally making it as easy as possible for New Yorkers to access those kinds of services.
Let's talk electability. You have been called everything from a visionary to a radical, sometimes within the same sentence. What's the biggest misconception about you?
I think the biggest misconception is that we can't win this race. You know, many people have put ceilings on our campaign from the beginning. They first said we couldn't hit 5, then 10, then 15, now 20%. And yet I sit speaking with you as a candidate who in the last poll was at 22%. And we don't live and die by these polls, but they do reflect a growing momentum and a growing hunger for a different kind of policy.
He's so fucking good. How are all of his answers so good? It's crazy.
Politics in this city, one that puts working people first. And what we will deliver on June 24th is not just a surprise or a statement, it'll be a victory. And we're confident of doing that because while there isn't an ideological majority in this city, be it progressives or any other, we know a majority of New Yorkers feel left behind by the economic policies of this mayoral administration and of politics today. And we're going to finally answer that with an agenda to make the city affordable.
You know, you mentioned the polls. I'm a big believer that the only one that counts is the one on election day.
Absolutely.
But the latest poll that we did see a few days before we are sitting down here before this interview was a Marist poll that showed Andrew Cuomo was ahead, a double-digit lead. That's certainly a steep hill for you to climb.
It is, but I've been climbing a steep hill ever since we started this campaign. And I would tell you that a few months ago, the final round had Andrew Cuomo leading me by about 40 points. In that poll you just referenced, that lead is cut in half to about 20 points. And we think that over the next few weeks, we are going to cut that lead in half again and again and again until we get to 51% on election night.
Ranked choice voting has certainly reshaped New York State politics. Which candidates do you see as your allies in this race, and who poses the biggest threat to your support?
You know, I have long said that I would only critique failed and disgraced executives of our city, be they present or past, and that has only pertained to Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo. That's where I've kept my fire, because that's where we need to turn the page on that chapter of failed leadership. There are a number of other candidates running looking to turn that same page, and I think that I'm committed to cross-endorsing well before Election Day so that we can let New Yorkers know not only fill their ballot, not only leave Andrew Cuomo off of it, but who else should actually be on that ballot. And
which among them are your strongest allies?
You know, I think there are a number of them. I'm proud to be on a Working Families Party slate with 3 of them, with Brad Lander, Adrian Adams, Zelnor Myrie. Those are other candidates that are looking to...
Has he gotten the DSA endorsement, or did they unendorse him for saying Israel has a right to exist? What's the dynamic there?
Turn that same page. And what I would say is the greatest threat to our vision for the future is Andrew Cuomo's vision for the past. And he wants to bring us back to a time when he was the governor, cutting Medicaid, stealing hundreds of millions of dollars from the MTA, claiming to fight for working people while giving his rich donors tax breaks. New Yorkers are tired of that. They're tired of that in Washington today under Donald Trump. They want a new kind of leader, and that's what our campaign presents.
And you know, you've earned a lot of endorsements from fellow progressives. Jamal Bowman came out the other day to support you, but you can't help but notice that AOC has stayed silent so far. Why do you think that is?
You know, I am proud to be represented by Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez and have been represented for many, many years. And I think she's done a terrific job in Washington. And I think she, like many others, are taking a look at this race and seeing how it is starting to play out. And I am looking to earn her endorsement and everyone's endorsement over the course of it, because ultimately what we know is that even though I've been running for more than 6 months, most New Yorkers are just tuning in now. This is the time really when the election begins. And there is still a long way to go for us to win that race on June 24th.
Do you expect that you will ultimately receive her endorsement in this race?
I hope to earn it.
If you win the keys to Gracie Mansion, who are some of the names you would tap for top posts in your administration?
You know, just as much as I've been having a public schedule across the 5 boroughs, I've been having a private schedule where I've been meeting with deputy mayors and commissioners from previous mayoral administrations. Because what New Yorkers deserve from me as their next mayor is a team that spans generations, a team that spans different administrations, and a team that ultimately is brought together by a shared excellence. We need to bring public excellence back into public service, and we've been missing that under this mayoral administration. And I'm very excited by the people that have been helping us not only understand the why or the what, but the how, because delivering this agenda is the #1 priority that I have.
Finish this sentence. If I win this race, it will be because
working people stand up and ask for a mayor that represents them.
If I lose this race, it will be because
Andrew Cuomo's record doesn't come out.
You often share your family's immigrant story and your mother's success as a filmmaker. How has that shaped your views on power, privilege, and opportunity here in New York City?
You know, both of my parents came to this country on scholarships, and my father, in 1962, my mother about a decade later. And this was the country where they pursued their dreams. My father is an academic, my mother is a filmmaker. And my mother, for a long time as I've been growing up, has always told me, if we don't tell our own stories, no one else will. And that has been a responsibility that I've sought to live up to, of telling the stories not only of myself, but also the stories of New Yorkers everywhere whose experiences are not being recognized at the heart of our
this
politics.
guy's riz. Honestly,
and
he's taken it away
they
himself.
left with me an understanding that though they have been successful, every other New Yorker is no less deserving of the benefits of that success. Everyone should have a childhood where you have an education, you have a home, you have health care, you have the ability to do more than just struggle. And I hope to deliver that for each and every New Yorker, no matter what zip code they live in.
Sheesh. Hold on. Just one. Okay. God damn, man. Has there been any messaging at all from Cuomo? If you look up Cuomo interview, the last thing is from 3 weeks ago, also from News 12.
We're all anxious. We're all tired.
He left his side.
We get to live a
convince anyone that they're safe in New York. And it is a threshold issue, because if people don't feel safe, Tara, they're not going to stay. They are not going to stay. If I have to worry about my daughter getting on a train at night, and if I'm staying up at night to make sure she gets home, does not bode well for the future of New York.
In places like Brownsville, where we met up, the stakes are painfully clear.
I was crying all day.
Ah, I see. Okay. So for his interview with News 12, it's not actually an interview. It's like a segment where they're endorsing him. They're doing his messaging. They're doing like, yeah, see, crime is an issue. We need to be tough on crime. Here's some crime interviews, you know?
Crying all night.
It was here just last summer that our cameras
Look
captured
at the scary film grain they put on this.
the chaos and heartbreak after two little girls, only 9 and 11, were hit by stray bullets in an alleged gang-related shooting at a local playground.
Innocent children. That's not right.
And the violence is only escalating. Police data obtained
Dude,
by
look at this like 1990s style like fear hit piece, man. With the like fake video grain, the like spooky tone, the tilted camera angle, and the cops showing up.
News 12 shows 455 crime complaints already this year in Brownsville, including 9 rapes and more than 200 felony assaults. To put that in perspective, there were just 488 total complaints in all of last year. But Cuomo says
Okay, what about like the overall crime rates though?
he has a plan.
When it comes to public
Yeah, it's a puff piece.
safety, we have to hire more police. And the first issue is going to be with the city council and many of the people who I'm running against who believe the exact opposite. They were defund the police. That's how this problem started, right? Defund the police. They reduced 3,000.
That's so true, man. That's so true. Yeah, we really defunded the NYPD, as evidenced by their minuscule budget. I think Zoran's thing was much more impactful and personable. Maybe, but boomers eat this shit up. Also, I'm just guessing, but I bet you anything, that these News 12 motherfuckers, they ran this Cuomo interview during prime time, during like maximum view hour, maybe even reran it a few times, and I bet you they did not do so with Zoran's interview, which had more views. It doesn't matter how many YouTube views they have. What matters is what the attention they got on TV.
5 years later,
Jesus
the fight
Christ.
against hate
Just a random point in the video. Jesus Christ. If New Yorkers vote for this guy, they deserve what he gives them.
it has only grown.
This state did much better than most states.
Campaign trail, hoping for the chance to lead America's largest city. But for Andrew Cuomo, this race isn't just about politics.
His father had a passion for those.
Jesus Christ. Oh, wow, this is so different comparatively. Yep, no substance whatsoever. No actual questions or answers or anything. Just a facile little puff piece for somebody who's running with no policy. Somebody who had to AI generate his policy proposals. Wretched, man. Deep State does not want Zoran to win.